to talk a little about this incident today. So at about 3 o'clock, we had two number one trains derail here at 96th Street Station, both northbound. One was in revenue service. It did have customers on the train. The other was out of service. It had been vandalized, and our crew was attempting to fix that issue. The trains literally at slow speed, thankfully, bumped into each other just north of the station. We were able to evacuate a number of customers. I'll let the chief and our colleagues from fire and EMT talk a little bit about that process. I want to thank them, by the way, for, as usual, their quick response. A couple things. Thankfully, there were no serious injuries. Obviously, two trains should not be bumping into one another. We are going to get to the bottom of that. What we do know is that the out-of-service train had been vandalized. A number of emergency cords had been pulled earlier by someone. They were able to reset all of them except one, and that was the reason why that train was still stuck in the station. It was being operated in the midsection, so from the conductor position, although there was a train operator at the front of the train and two train supervisors as well. So 4 employees on the train that was out of service, and as I said, a couple of hundred customers on the train as well. Look, at the end of the day, thankfully this was low speed. We'll get to the bottom of this and make sure that whatever occurred doesn't happen again. Lastly, I do want to say that notwithstanding the lack of serious injuries, it's a little bit messy down there. It's going to take us a while to get this service back and running. We have crews down there now. I expect we'll be out there all night. And my hope is we will have service restored tomorrow for rush hour, but I cannot guarantee that. So I'm going to ask our customers who use the 1, 2, and 3 lines to continue to watch our website, our apps, and see how we're proceeding. But suffice to say, we will work hard to get service back by tomorrow morning, but that is not guaranteed. With that, I want to turn it over to Chief 𝗕𝗏𝗓 from NYPD Transit to say a few words. I'll come back for questions. Chief.
Thank you, President Davey. So this afternoon at about 3 o'clock, there were 2 transit canine officers who were assigned to this station, the 96th Street Station. They were in the mezzanine area when they were approached by a male who said that he believes 2 trains collided downstairs. Based on that, the 2 officers within seconds were downstairs on that northbound platform, and what they came upon were 2 trains, both of them facing northbound, both of them side by side, and both of them were half in the tunnel and just about half out of the tunnel. The half that was out of the tunnel was adjacent to the platform area. Based upon what they came upon, they radioed that in, requested assistance, including additional police officers, as well as EMS and the fire department. They then boarded the trains in the attempt to see if they would come upon any injured passengers, which they did. They rendered aid, again requested EMS to respond to the scene, and then those officers, along with additional officers that responded, helped people off the trains and onto the platforms to safety. With that said, there were a number of individuals removed to local hospitals. Fortunately, as President Davey said, and as you'll hear from the fire department shortly, none sustaining serious injuries, which we're very fortunate. With that, I'd just like to commend the responding officers from the NYPD. Again, no day is usual being a cop. Who could have thought of this? Who could have thought of just standing in a platform and being told that 2 trains derailed with multiple injuries? But the officers' response was exceptional. Everything we asked them to do. I'd also like to thank our partner agencies in the MTA and certainly in the fire department and EMS. Thank you.
Assistant Chief Mike Myers, MEYERS. At approximately 1500 hours, our units were notified of of 2 trains colliding. It took us about 3 minutes to arrive on scene. Once we arrived on scene, we began to do an assessment downstairs. They met up with their New York City Police Department transit counterparts downstairs, began to search for the emergency evacuation devices, which are devices that the MTA and the fire department have on each train station in order to help evacuate passengers to the train in case there's an instance like this, about being prepared in advance. They begin to locate those devices and also doing a structural assessment of both the trains and also the train tracks, and as well as request power off. Again, in a situation like this, it's incredibly perilous if we operate on tracks and have people on tracks that are live, because again, it causes a great danger to both the responder and also to people trying to get on and off the trains. So we requested that power off. The MTA complied with that, and we're able to start to begin evacuations of the folks on the train. Thankfully, in this case, as the trains collided, like they were talking about, my counterparts were talking about, we were able to coordinate together and get all of those folks off of the train without any large-scale significant injuries from that. I'll let EMS speak about the injuries in a second. But again, it takes, in these scenes, whenever we have multiple agencies operating, what's great about that is everyone comes together and makes it happen, right? Because at the end of the day, we all have the same goal in mind, and that's for all of us to go home safe, and for all the people of the city of New York who ride in our subways to go home safe. And again, that's hopefully what we got done here today. So I'll let EMS talk about the injuries.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Deputy Assistant Chief Ian, IAN Swords, SWORDS. This afternoon around 3 o'clock, EMS received multiple 911 calls reporting a train derailment. Upon our unit's arrival here on the scene, they were met with several patients. Knowing that there was a train involved and the potential number of patients that could entail, they began multiple casualty incident triage, where we check every person as they come off the train for injury, and if they are injured, for the severity of injury. Fortunately, nobody was seriously injured. The injuries that were sustained were consistent with a low-speed train derailment, and all of those patients have been removed to area hospitals.
How many people total within that car?
I'm sorry? Excuse me?
How many people total were within that car?
I don't know.
I was told that each train had about 300 to 500 people on it. We had to evacuate the one train, and then we also had to evacuate a train that was in the tunnel behind it through that original train.
And we had a total of 24 people injured out of those numbers.
Just to be clear on Chief. So the train that derailed, about 300 or so folks were on that. What the Chief was referencing is there was a train behind it, was not involved in the incident, but was stuck. We brought that in here to 96th Street. That had another 300-400 customers on it as well. They were evacuated safely. So the incident train had a couple hundred folks, as best we can tell, but we evacuated at least one other train as a result of the power being shut down.
And the other was empty, right?
And then the other, so the two incident trains, one was in revenue service that had a couple hundred folks, as the Chief said, that was evacuated. The other train was empty of customers. 4 employees were on that train. That was the train that was disabled, that had been vandalized, and they were trying to fix it.
All right, other questions? Who's got it? Anybody?
Sorry.
Yes.
Was this operator ever, was there a switch problem? Where did the breakdown happen?
Yeah, so we're going to look at all those factors, obviously. Switch signal. At this point, there's nothing, or in equipment, there's nothing to suggest that it was equipment related. We will obviously look at human factors as well. I think it's a little too early to tell, but at this point, from what we can tell, the equipment was working as intended.
Yes, sir. Is it true that some people were evacuated from the incident train by being taken onto the empty work train?
That is true. Yeah, that is true. Let me EMS want to explain it? Or fire want to explain that?
They're evacuated.
Yep.
What was the question again, just so I get it?
True. Some folks are telling us that they were evacuated by being taken onto the empty work train that initially hit them.
Sure. So in order, like the biggest thing with whenever we're evacuating people from one of these trains, again, we don't want them down on the tracks, right? The tracks create a hazard, right? Uneven ground. We don't know, again, the condition of who we have walking on those trains. So our main goal, as always, is to do a structural assessment of the trains. In this case, we found that they were both structurally okay for us to walk on and evacuate people through. So we'd rather keep people off that track bed and keep them on the trains and get them back to the platform. It just makes for a much easier, smoother evacuation and a much quicker one to get people off the trains.
So through that work train, they were able to get to the platform?
Yes.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
Was the number one train using the new CBT signaling system?
No. Not that I'm aware of. No, yeah, there's no CBTC on the number one. So
Struck train.
no, there's no CBTC on the number one.
All right, anybody else?
Can you talk a little bit about how many cars were derailed? And then second, can you talk about security? Because you said that this train was vandalized. Cars were cut. You're coming off of people getting into a train a few days ago and taking it for a joyride. And then a couple months ago.
Well, hold on. I didn't take it for a joyride, but so there's a lot of narrative there. What's your question?
So can you talk about security?
Sure.
You mentioned that this was vandalized.
Yeah. Yeah, Chief, why don't you take that? Yeah.
So, as far as security, I opened up with when this occurred, we had NYPD cops in the station. They were on scene within seconds. They were here before 911 was even called. So, if you want to talk about security, at least today in this station, 2 cops were on scene.
I'm talking about the car reports that were cut that had this train out of service.
Well, that's to be determined. I mean, that's what I was... Right, that's to be determined as far as what occurred with that. That's an investigation. We don't have the answers for that yet. But as far as security in this station here, we had cops here.
All right, anybody
How
else?
many cars? How many cars?
Last question. Go ahead.
How many cars in that train?
10 cars.
10 cars.
10 cars.
All right, thanks everybody. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
Yeah.